What if the greatest threat to a free press wasn't actually from the government, but maybe from within the press itself?
Hmm. That's a really challenging idea to start with.
It is, isn't it? And it's precisely the territory Mark Levin explores in his book, Unfreedom of the Press. It's definitely caused a stir.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just another critique, it's arguing something pretty fundamental about American journalism today.
Right. So get ready, because our mission here is to really unpack Levin's arguments. Look at how he builds his case, the rhetorical tools he uses.
And just so you know, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM for deeper, more dynamic book analysis. We're aiming to dissect these complex ideas together.
Exactly. So let's start with the core thesis. What's Levin really arguing in this book?
Well, at its heart, Levin's saying the American press isn't, being suppressed by the government or anything external like that.
Okay.
Instead, he argues it's actively destroying its own freedom, its own credibility from the inside. His main claim, and it's a pretty fiery one, is that modern journalism has basically abandoned objectivity completely. And instead, it's become all tangled up in progressive political and social activism.
So he's essentially saying the press isn't just biased sometimes, it's acting like a political player itself.
That's the core of it, yes.
Yeah.
He sees it as a fundamental shift away from its intended role.
Wow. Okay. That is a strong accusation. Really sets the stage. So to get this, we probably need to understand Mark Levin himself better. Who is he? What's his background that leads him to write something like this?
Good question. Mark Levin he's a major figure in American conservative circles with a huge presence.
Right. I know the name. Radio host.
Yes. Syndicated radio host, lawyer by training, hosts a show on Fox News, and he's written multiple #1 bestsellers. So he has this massive established platform.
And that background, law, and media must shape how he argues things.
Definitely. It gives him this sort of authoritative voice. He presents his points with a kind of, legalistic structure, but also with the conviction of a media personality who knows his audience. He's framing it as a case, really.
And the timing. 2019, that feels important, doesn't it? Like dropping a match into gasoline.
Absolutely. 2019 was peak political polarization, especially in the U.S. You had constant debates about media credibility, fake news, particularly around the Trump administration's coverage.
Right, so the ground was fertile for this kind of argument.
Exactly. His audience, mainly American conservatives, his radio listeners, his TV viewers, they were already pretty skeptical of the mainstream news outlets. This book was almost designed to confirm what they already felt.
So it gives them a structured argument, talking points almost.
Precisely. It provides the sort of intellectual framework to back up that existing distrust.
Okay, so what's Levin actually trying to do with the book? What's his stated goal beyond just criticizing and the tone? It sounds pretty intense.
He's quite clear about his purpose. He wants to convince readers that the American press is basically self-destructing, not because of outside pressure, but because it chose activism over objectivity. That's the message.
And the tone?
Oh, it's anything but neutral. Reviews consistently describe it as highly critical, really assertive, often combative. You see phrases like bombast and bile, mentions of his rabid disgust for what he sees as media politicization.
So definitely not a detached academic analysis.
Not at all. It's more like a passionate rallying cry for his side, an indictment.
That makes sense, given the tone. Now let's look at how he builds this case. He seems to use those classic rhetorical appeals quite effectively. Ethos, pathos, logos. Let's start with ethos establishing his credibility. How does he do that, beyond just, being Mark Levin?
Well, the resume helps, of course. But his main strategy for ethos is positioning himself as a defender of America's founding principles.
Okay, so connecting to patriotism.
Exactly. He frames himself as someone protecting the Constitution, the Declaration, from what he calls a hostile media. This resonates deeply with his conservative, patriotic audience. It instantly makes him seem trustworthy, like he's on their side fighting the good fight.
So he's not just an analyst, he's a champion of certain values.
That's the position he takes, yes. It creates a very strong bond with readers who share those values.
And what about pathos? The emotional appeal. How does he connect on that level? Because the tone suggests it's pretty emotional.
Oh, heavily. He uses very emotionally charged language, words designed to spark anger, frustration, maybe even a sense of betrayal towards the media.
Can you give an example?
Sure. One review mentioned a quote Levin uses, describing a politician's words, now get this, as the feces of his moral depravity.
Wow. That's visceral.
It is. And that kind of language aims for a gut reaction, right? It solidifies distrust. And when he repeatedly frames the media as the enemy of the people, he's tapping directly into that deep frustration his readers likely already feel.
So it's about mobilizing emotions, not just persuading minds.
I think that's a fair way to put it. It aims to create an emotional front against a perceived enemy.
Okay, so he builds credibility, stirs emotions, but what about the logic? The logos? How does he build the actual case, especially using history?
Right, logos. He relies a lot on history and quotes. His historical argument is key. He argues that American journalism wasn't always trying to be objective.
Oh.
He says it used to be openly partisan, honest about its leanings. Then, during the Progressive era, early 20th century, it adopted what he calls a false veneer of objectivity.
So professionalism became a mask, in his view.
That's his argument, that this emphasis on nonpartisanship was or became dishonest. This historical story is the foundation for saying the media's current bias isn't just bias, it's hypocrisy. They pretend to be neutral, but they aren't, and they used to be more honest about it.
Interesting take on history, and he backs this up with evidence. You mentioned quotes.
Loads of quotes. One review literally says pages and pages are just quotes from media sources. He uses their own words, he argues, to expose bias and falsehoods.
And specific examples, case studies.
Yes. He brings up things like the New York Times and its historical failure to really cover the Holocaust adequately. He presents that as the press looking away. And he talks about a Pulitzer-winning reporter who apparently wrote false stories about Stalin's genocide in Ukraine. He uses these as examples of major media failures, arguing there's a pattern of misrepresenting big events.
Does he do original interviews or research for this?
According to one review, no. There's no original research or interviews cited, but the book's persuasive power for its audience comes from how it synthesizes all these existing sources and quotes into one narrative. He's building a case file, essentially.
Okay, so weaving together existing material to make his point. Beyond those core appeals, what other specific techniques does he use to shape how readers see the press?
Several key strategies stand out. Framing is probably the biggest one.
Framing. How so?
He totally rejects the usual idea that the main threat to press freedom is the government. He reframes the whole problem as internal.
Right, the self-destruction idea.
Exactly. He says the issue isn't government repression, but things like self-censorship, groupthink, bias by omission, and passing off opinion or even outright lies as news. It's a complete shift in focus.
And he gives the media a new label too, doesn't he?
He does. He calls it the Democratic Party press. That framing explicitly paints the media not as an independent watchdog, but as an arm of a political party. A very powerful rhetorical move.
That's a direct hit. And you mentioned history earlier. He seems to use contrasts a lot. Juxtaposition.
Absolutely fundamental to his structure. He constantly contrasts the past and present. You have the heroic patriot press of the founding era, which he says supported American principles.
Versus the modern media, which he paints as hostile to those principles.
Precisely. And he contrasts the open partisanship of old newspapers where you knew what you were getting with what he calls the massive untruth of today's media, hiding its agenda behind that mask of objectivity. It paints a picture of decline and deliberate deception.
And the sheer volume of quotes you mentioned, that feels like another technique.
Yeah.
Repetition.
Yes, that's a key part of the logo's appeal, but also a strategy in itself. Repeating quote after quote after quote is designed to overwhelm the reader.
Like a relentless drumbeat, as one review put it.
Exactly like that. It aims to hammer home the idea that the bias is everywhere. It's pervasive. It makes it feel undeniable, like the evidence is just piling up until you have to agree. It wears down skepticism.
Okay, this gives us a good picture of the book's arguments and methods. Let's talk about effectiveness, limits, ethics. For its intended audience, conservatives, it sounds like it really hits the mark.
Oh, incredibly effective for them. It validates that feeling of distrust towards mainstream media, provides those well-researched talking points we mentioned.
So it achieves its goal of starting a dialogue, at least within that group.
Yes, within that segment, it definitely fuels the conversation and equips people to articulate their criticisms.
Now, we've been talking about the book's impact and how it builds its case. Before we get into the ethical side more deeply, just a quick mention. We explore topics like this further on Mindful Moments, that's our YouTube channel. It uses AI for book analysis, really trying to spark reflection and clear thinking. Okay, back to Unfreedom of the Press. What about its limitations and the ethical questions it raises?
Well, the very things that make it effective for its base. The combative tone, the strong partisan framing, make it pretty unlikely to persuade anyone who's skeptical or, politically in the middle.
It preaches to the choir, essentially.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
And critics point out a big potential limitation.
Yeah.
The book doesn't really turn that same critical lens onto right-wing media outlets.
Ah, so it focuses the criticism in one direction.
That's the critique, which, if you're claiming to analyze unfreedom of the press generally, might seem like a significant omission. It raises questions about whether it's a balanced assessment of the whole media landscape.
And that leads into the ethical debate, right? Using such strong, polarizing language.
Exactly. Supporters would say Levin's just being honest, delivering a necessary wake-up call about media corruption, however harsh it sounds.
But the counter-argument.
Critics question the ethics of using rhetoric that's so emotionally charged and, frankly, polarizing. Is the goal to find common ground or improve the media overall? Or is it more about solidifying one side against the other?
So potentially deepening divisions rather than fostering a broader, more nuanced discussion.
That's the concern some raise, that it rallies the base effectively but might contribute to making public discourse even more fragmented.
So pulling it together, Levin's core argument is that the press is its own worst enemy, abandoning objectivity for activism. Whether you buy that argument or not, thinking about it really forces you to consider how you engage with news yourself.
Absolutely. It underscores the need to be critical consumers of all information, regardless of where it comes from or how neutral it claims to be. Understanding the kinds of rhetorical strategies Levin uses helps you see them elsewhere too. It helps you analyze, not just absorb.
And for more analysis like this, using AI to explore books and ideas, do check out Mindful Moments on YouTube and, of course, our podcasts right here.
It leaves us with a big question, though. If, as Levin argues, the press has abandoned objectivity, how do any of us find and define truth in this incredibly complex media world we live in now?
That's definitely something to mull over.
For sure.
If you want a more detailed summary of the book itself, click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary.
And please do subscribe and share this deep dive if you found it useful.
You can also find a link to purchase the book if you want to read Levin's arguments firsthand.
And above all, keep thinking critically.